And we've come to the main event, apparently.
I don't know about
Ireland hosting Argentina in what is set to be not perhaps the prettiest game of the weekend. This is taking place at Stade Aviva in Dublin, kicking off at 2:15 GMT. Matt Carley of the RFU in charge, with Christoph Ridley and Adam Leal on the sidelines and Tom Foley in the box, TMOing. This obviously Ireland-Argentina, particularly in the context of World Cups, is a game with much history
Definitely
to it,
a
much rivalry
right?
to it.
Yeah.
I think overall they met 23 times, 14 wins to Ireland, 8 to Argentina, 1 drawn game. Obviously, you look at 1999, you had the Argentinians knocking Ireland out of the World Cup. You go back to 2003, you had Ireland knocking the Argentinians out of the World Cup. You go to 2007, Argentinians again knock Ireland out of the World Cup. Fast forward to 2015, Argentinians knock Ireland out of the World Cup. I mean, there have been so many consequential matchups between these two teams. Not many of them we've come out the better of, but we do have an imperious record against them in these November games in Dublin.
Yes, they have yet to win in Dublin.
They
have yet to win in Irish soil, I should say, as well. Ireland have only won twice, I think, in Argentinian soil, although one of those games is one of the 5 games that actually are only fully capped matches for Argentina, rather than Ireland don't count them. I think there were games between 1950s and 70s, but it's a ways back when. Their only draw actually came amongst them as well, so it's a curious record with that one, but the recent record is more serious. When there's money on it, when the chips are down, it's a great game, and as you say, like we've given and taken. We've probably taken a bit more than we've given on balance in those World Cups, but Argentina in autumn tend to be a different animal compared to the certainly World Cup mode, and we are 2 years away from a World Cup. They have not been very impressive this year. There's no doubt about that. They have been more impressive in the last couple of weeks than they were in the Rugby Championship. There is something to be said for that. They've definitely kind of picked up their game. We know what they're about. It's about Ireland being consistent and being able to deliver in a game that they won't be quite as pitched or as emotionally charged, and certainly the crowd won't be anywhere near as emotionally charged as they were last week for the All Blacks game.
Yeah, I mean, it on paper, if you're looking at this from the outside, you're thinking, Ireland beat the All Blacks, Argentina, no match compared to the All Blacks. Surely this is a routine win. But the reality is that this could become a sticky game for Ireland.
Could very easily.
The way that they played last week, certainly, keep ball, hold ball. It's the game that Argentina want to play. They want to play defence. They want you to have the ball. This is going to be an Ireland team. They're going to find it a lot harder to win the gain line than they did against the All Blacks. The Pumas will be just so dialed in to not losing the gain line. It is pretty much all they have. Not losing that game line. They also are going to be missing Gibson Park and Sexton, which has been the core of everything they've been doing on offense. As much as the ball playing forwards have worked so well, the speed from 9 and direction from 10 has been everything to how this offense is hummed. And you've seen in moments when Carberry and Murray came in, it stopped and it became more kicking oriented straight away, right back to what it was beforehand. I mean, Murray just kicks. I mean, he just resets and kicks from the middle third. He doesn't do anything else. And so the real challenge is, can Ireland, in the absence of winning the game line easily, get moving on offense without Sexton, without Gibson Park? This is an interesting challenge, and it's very much up in the air as to whether they can actually get moving against a tough defence. Really tough.
It's very true. Can they back up an historic win with a slightly more routine one, but with a changed side and with slightly changed tactics? Because you will have to change tactics. You'll have to kick a fair bit. You have to try and play territory against a side that, you want to keep the ball and go at them and get your offence going, but you do it on your terms in their territory, where you aren't going to run the risk of coughing up a cheap 3, which is one of their few avenues to scoring. Rather, sometimes you might get pinned for a ceiling, or they might get the better of you and be able to exit. But if it's a midfield lineup they set up through an exit, you can defend them for a couple of phases. They'll probably kick it back to you and can reset that. There's limited risk in that regard. So you should try and play a patient, territory-based game and try and put the squeeze on. And in those moments back that you have more in the offensive end to get the result, which has kind of been the MO for all the tier 1 sides that have beaten them so far this year. Your South Africans,
it's just been win enough moments.
Win enough moments, and it'll tell on the scoreboard, because they will probably defend too much. And even the way they beat Italy last week was by kicking the leather off the ball and just capitalising on mistakes. So don't cough up mistakes. Be solid under the high ball. Give as good as you get in the kicking area, in the kicking department, and then ultimately have more in your locker as far as an offensive acumen is concerned. That's going to be the MO for them.
The set piece is huge. The set piece is absolutely massive in this game. Can Ireland generate the ins against the Pumas from maul situations, but from line out moves? Yeah. Can they get solidity and a bit of go for it at scrum time so that they can launch off that? And can they play that smart footy that Paul O'Connell wants them to play, using set piece to leverage their attack to get their very excellent and dynamic footballing forward pack to unpick this Pumas defence? I mean, it's a great matchup on paper, but the Pumas, they give up nothing to nobody so far this year. The Springboks had to work really, really hard to get to the end of them, but ultimately out-muscled them. Do Ireland fancy playing that attritional a game against them? No. So then how do you move? How do you get around them? You saw Tyg Furlong in that pivot position last week. You've got to really lean into that. You've got to make fools of them, really, because they come flying out of the line, they want to hit you, they give you very little options, so you have to pick sharp lines, you have to pick the right options off each other to unstick them and to win contacts against them. And then once you get around the corner, then they start giving up penalties, they get sloppy.
And they shoot. Sometimes if there's enough deception, you saw the All Blacks doing lovely things, and Bowden Barrett doing sexy out the back sidearm passes after Kramer's flapping impotently at him. Like, Kramer is not impotent, he's a very powerful man, but he, like, there are things, bad habits like discipline in this Argentina side that are still prevailing. That pack is a little meatheadish and sometimes a little gung ho to just throw a shot in or be a bit cheeky and a bit reckless and a bit nasty at times. But that only gets brought out through pressure, like you saw in Italy last week. There was no issue. Kramer scored the first try. They were great. Matera was throwing skip passes off the left hand to capitalise on tries. They're good footballers themselves as well as being sometimes somewhat headers. It's on Ireland to try and turn that screw enough that you can then be like, because Ireland are quite a disciplined side. That is one of the things that is definitely in our column over this Argentina side, is that, like, Argentina are on one end of the spectrum of being pretty terribly disciplined for a tier 1 side. Ireland are nearly the most disciplined you'll find in terms of when they are organised and are going through their process. They don't give away as many penalties. They're pretty technical about their work, and that's got to be a point of difference. You're at home, just reveal their bad habits.
The offensive breakdown. I mean, last week against Italy, it was comical how much joy the Pumas were getting on the defensive breakdown, and it was mostly Julian Montoya, but we know that Matera can do it as well. We know that Kramer has a steal in him. We know
it's not even a steal. Like, they were roughing up poor Varney a lot of the time.
Sure,
that is,
just winning those breakdowns, clearing those rucks. That would be a picture that the Pumas haven't had before, and that's a winning picture. Like, we boast about this dynamic Ireland pack. This is a really big test for them without Sexton, without Gibson Park, to win one-on-one matchups against a tough defence.
Very tough,
and to just, like, through picking smart options, winning the gain line, and then when Montoya goes in over the ball, your James Ryan clean-outs, blasting them out of it. Exactly right.
Furlong clean-outs. Big, monstrous, removal of the jackler entirely from the breakdown.
Exactly. And then you want the game playing out a little like the Scotland one did this year, from an Ireland point of view. Only the Pumas' offence isn't nearly as good as the Scots, so they won't pad the score. But basically you're just causing them out. They're a defence that loves to jackal so much, and they can't jackal because the Irish are giving them an offensive breakdown picture that they just can't deal with. They can't get in, they have no sniff, and then the Pumas will get frustrated. If they can't get an in, if they can't get their hands on the ball, breakdown after breakdown,
high tackle might come.
Or no arms tackle or any of that stuff. That's kind of what Ireland need to be doing. But I definitely think it needs to be quick. It needs to be dynamic. You need to see all of those little interplays that you saw last week. So important to unstick this defence.
Be smart.
They're very good.
If you're stupid or slow, or which, like, they're both one and the same in this, it's stupid to be slow against them because they're physical. You play them in. Like, they will be easily discouraged if you can be dynamic and kind of pick them apart in the early goings and build a score and build a bit of scoreboard pressure. It's tough for them to see their ins back into the game with the style that they're playing. So that's why it's kind of easy to play them in some regards. But there are trappings there, like, if you are complacent and if you are sluggish in it, you play them right in. You saw that in the game they won against the All Blacks. Like, the All Blacks were a little bit dialed out in terms of their offence, and they were keeping on trying. And same with the one that they drew with the Wallabies. They were, like, flinging the ball very gung-ho, that young Wallabies side, around the middle third, and then suddenly, poach, 3 points, up. And
overplaying in your half can be a mistake, especially when the Pumas will so obligingly just set up shop in their own half and play the whole game there, when they're just no threat. You know their offence isn't going to be threatening, so if you can just stop them from getting penalties at rucks and set pieces, you limit at their method of getting up the field, and if you show enough on offense, you'll navigate yourself enough room to edge the kicking battle and then play the game down there until they wear and tear and give up penalties from which you can get threes, and then eventually get yourself a try and edge into the lead in a kind of a low scoring non-classic. Is your Irish picture.
That is definitely the Irish picture. We've seen it a few times before. I'd like to see us exert control. I'd like to see our barnstorming offense keep its momentum going, and I'd like, to be honest, I'd love to see us side them open on phase one from a few set piece moves.
Well, sure,
that's ideal scenario. But yeah, no, I'd like managing the game well. It's a big challenge for the halfbacks to try and dictate that. But generally, I think we are, like, with home advantage as well, and just momentum and form, I think we should be confident going into this fixture, and it's just about arriving to the pitch and being consistent. It has been a buzzword in the camp. They've been talking about it. They are aware of the trappings of, like, high emotional come back in on a lower ebb, so they're going to try and mitigate that as much as they can, but playing their own game and playing it smart should be enough.
They celebrated last week from beating the All Blacks, but there was no inkling of getting carried away. I mean, we're officially not allowed to anymore. Literally, it doesn't matter what happens. We could go unbeaten from now until September 2023. It's not going to matter. You cannot get carried. We're not allowed. We've done it too many times before. Not allowed. Don't care. You have to. You're just building, adding blocks, trying to improve. That's always the point for Ireland. And from the Pumas' point of view, in terms of winning this game, it's a curious one. Obviously, they have this history with Ireland. We know what this team is. Any thoughts of them developing offensive patterns? Really, not
less so. Like, they'll take a try. If there's a 3v2, they can do that.
Yeah.
And they're forward. Like, Matera has a lovely pass on him, and like they have skills and stuff, and their offensive instincts are still there. That was what was encouraging about their showing in Italy last week, was they managed to, with the kicking, which is the primary attack, eventually you end up in a scenario against Italy where you have the ball back in their territory and there's numbers on this side, and then they can execute in that scenario.
The ball,
Maroney will find a good passer. He'll find it. Like, they have good players out there, but Ireland are kind of operating at a level where they're more used to more sophisticated offenses coming at them, and they're like, their defense has not always been alert to them. They still cough up a few cheap tries when they're there, and perhaps it breaks such that Argentina just have to put it through the hands and find a try at one point, but their MO is going to be kicking. They're going to try and challenge the air. They're going to try and defend. That is, you're not going to see them do wholesale change in the last game of the year at all. What you will say for them is they actually have a better record north than they did in the south. Obviously, they were winless in the southern hemisphere, but this year they're actually 2-1-1 up in the northern hemisphere.
Who are the two wins for?
They beat Wales. They beat Romania,
and they beat Italy.
Oh, sorry, they're 3-1-1. Yeah, now 3-1-1, which is actually pretty decent showing up in the northern hemisphere from them. So they will try and carry a bit of that momentum into this. They know that they can match up okay against Ireland some of the times. They have good history there. They will probably be aware of the fact that they've never won in Dublin, and it is a one to try and target. I just don't know if I see their avenues apart from defensive ones. I think they can defend this young Irish side very gamely for most of it. It's about whether they can win the kicking duel.
Yeah, well, certainly in part that's true, and Boffelli is going to have a big role to play. But listen, the way, as I said in the context of the Ireland preview, the way that Ireland played last week against the All Blacks is exactly the way the Pumas want to play. Like, Ireland moved the ball a lot from the middle third. They attacked they kept it in hand. They wanted to run through phases, and that is the primary battle of this game. Ireland cleared the offensive breakdown tremendously against the All Blacks. They won every contact. They zipped over the gain line. They manoeuvred their way down the field smartly. Now all of a sudden, no Gibson Park, no Sexton. Their offense is bound to be, it will be more clunky, and they might be encouraged by what they're doing and all of this Andy Farrell juju to go out and be themselves, express themselves. The Pumas need to get out of the line on the inside, pressure, smash them, give them nothing on the inside, and then when they run that little screen play to the 10 on the outside, likely Carberry trying to run that same play that Sexton runs, only it probably won't be as smart. Somebody in Carberry's face, smashing him, forcing turnovers on the defensive end, primarily in their territory, generating penalties, kicking threes. That is absolutely the mantra to discourage this Ireland side and just give them nothing up. It is a defensive performance that'll win it for them, as well as a kicking one. I mean, Ireland probably if the Argentinians start dominating the defensive end, Ireland will go back to the kicking game. True. And then it's Boffelli up against Keenan, and that's like an elite aerial matchup that Boffelli will fancy after last week. He's a very fine player.
He's the taller of the two, and he was imperious last week, but then so was Keenan. It's a really good box office matchup because both of these sides fancy themselves a good kicking side, a good footballing side, as well as everything else. So that will be one of the games that if Argentina are to be successful, they'll have to edge that battle for sure. Generally just need to be better at exiting and setting up camp in opponents' 22s for a while. We saw it, like they were able to do it against Italy, and it yielded good dividends. They ended up scoring some rather nice tries, but against tier 1 sides they generally haven't been able to. And even in the games against Wales that they won with their physicality, they were still not great in that particular department.
And I don't think they're going to blow Ireland away physically.
I don't think so
at all. Like you talk about the 3 wins they've had up north. It was Wales minus Lions and injuries, Romania the tier 2 side, and Italy the tier 2 side. Yes. Ireland is out a step up from that.
It is, and Ireland not only that, but Ireland as a pack, as a forward unit, have dominated all of their games this year. They haven't always won them, to be courtesy of the Baxter. In the first 2 games in the 6, the forwards have won their matchups all year. So it is a tough ask for this Argentina defence. It's as tough a pack as they'll face since the Springboks. And they didn't win that matchup against the Springboks.
Where are the points coming from? The points are probably primarily defensive.
Turnovers in the middle third resulting in a Boffelli 3, 6, 9, 12... 15, 18, 21.
And then maybe a mole try if they can generate that, if they can get a penalty and move it to the corner on one occasion or 2 occasions, and then maybe, as you say, the kick chase tries, but a bit like the box, and actually worse than the box, let's be real. They have limited the ways that they can score because their passing remains pretty damn clunky in the multi-phase. And the Irish blitz, like
Carberry interception is probably one of their ins
for sure. 100% it is, and that's a worry of mine. But they are a little rudimentary, and you're right to cite that Ireland's pack has been mean and physical, and it could play out a little like their game against the Springboks, where they're trying to bring a forward-oriented game to a team that's able to handle them, and they don't have much else. And Ireland do have a bit more, and Ireland see at home. That's certainly how I hope it'll go.
That's how I hope it's also kind of how I suspect it will. I mean, 5 tries last week for the Argentinians. Can they find some here? That's the first time in a while they've managed 5. So there is a bit of momentum they carry in. But it is the last game of their long season as well. A fair bit of travel. A few of their guys have been talking about being away for quite a while. Looking forward to going home. Christmas in mind.
Plenty of them have they're all European based.
A lot of them are based
Christmas in the top of tours is all they have to look forward to.
But that's still less jet lagged than they are used to being in this regard. So no, it's a long season. I do suspect Ireland will win, and I'm hopeful that we win quite cleanly and comfortably. The fear is that we end up in a scrap, and if we end up in a scrap, we will lose some men, because have Argentina failed to injure someone in any of these games so far? They are angular and physical, and they do hit bloody hard, both sides of the pill. Like even their offensive game, it is rudimentary. It needs a bit more, but they will bring big carriers around the corner, and you have to tackle them, and that's tough as well. But I do think Ireland are in a better ebb at the minute, and are a better team at the minute, and are at home. My hope is we win pretty cleanly, and our offense kind of gets a chance to shine against a really good defense. My fear is that we end up in a proper scrap, and my real fear is that we lose that scrap. But I think my more realistic fear is we end up in a scrappy game that we ultimately win, but at a cost.
That's probably my assessment as well. I'm curious, is what I am. I'm curious to see if the offense works without Sexton. Murray Kinsella had a piece, and I rarely disagree with him, the rugby analyst out here in Ireland, but he was saying how Ireland's offense has blossomed, moving away from its dependence on Sexton. But yet what I'm seeing, as much as Sexton doesn't have as much touches as he used to have, he's calling all the plays, and every time he leaves the field it becomes less good.
The try stop. We scored 3 tries with Sexton on the field and no tries with Sexton off the field last week.
And that's a constant theme. I mean, even in the Japan game the week prior, once Sexton went off, it got worse. And so this is going to be a game entirely without Sexton, and for good measure without Gibson Park, as I've mentioned before. So I'm curious. Can we do it? Can we get it moving? The pack is excellent, but are we going to go back and play a scrappy game? I think ultimately what I'm leaning on for my prediction is just that I'm unimpressed with the Pumas' approach. I don't think that it generates enough points for them. I think as mean as they are, they'll just lose just about every game against the top tier sides because they don't score enough points.
I think you're probably right in boiling it down to that. I think that's basically where it'll be decided. Ireland have been managing to find some points over the last year, and I think at home it will be our victory. But who do you got in this final game of the weekend? Let us know in the comments down below how the Sunday game will go. But
thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.